Hello and welcome to this week's BizSmart Lunch and Learn webinar. Our weekly webinars are aimed to provide advice and share knowledge amongst business owners on key business topics and specialist areas. This is part of our service to our Smart Room members. If you are not already a member or a BizSmart client and would like to access our archive of webinars, then please visit our website biz-smart.co.uk and go to the Smart Room page. Our host joining me today is BizSmart Select member Gill Hutchinson from Aardvark Communications. But before we start the webinar, can I ask you all to use the question mark function on your screen to post any questions that you may have for Gill, and she will answer them all at the end of the session. Thank you, Gill. Over to you.
Good morning, everyone. What we're going to talk about today is how to identify any gaps that you might not have thought about before in your marketing. When I talk to business owners about marketing, they usually tell me they're disappointed with the results. That's fairly typical. In particular, it isn't as effective at delivering the good quality sales leads that we need to grow the businesses at the speed we want to grow them. So if you think that might be you, to make the most of this webinar, grab yourself a piece of scrap paper and a pen, and then you'll be ready to go as we go through some of these questions. So typically, business owners are frustrated, as I say, with marketing, and if they employ a marketing agency or suppliers, it's quite often the case they feel frustrated. They might be sold a silver bullet, social media or marketing automation, it doesn't work. They might feel it's not adding value. They're quite often frustrated about not knowing really what works and what doesn't. So they know they're wasting money somewhere, they're just not quite sure where that is. And typically, if you do your own in-house marketing in a small business, it's not what you're expert at. You're normally really good at your products and services and delivering those to customers that are very happy with what you do, but marketing probably wasn't on your radar when you set up your business or when you're trying to grow your business. So quite often business owners will use an external agency, and they want to get the best out of that creative agency, but again, it's something they probably haven't done before in a previous life. So sometimes those creative agencies are left to get on with it and not given the proper direction and not really held to account on value for money. So that can be another issue. And then typically with a small business, because we're all business owners and we're very busy, we're doing delivery, we're doing HR, we're doing IT, all those other things that we need to do to keep our business running efficiently and effectively. Marketing can lack consistency. It can be something we do when we've got a bit of spare time, but it isn't being done, week in, week out, or month in, month out, depending on your model. So it's something that tends to get sort of forgotten about when we get busy. So that's another thing that can be an issue. So then the next question is, well, okay, you're not very happy with your marketing, but how do you think you can improve it? And on this slide is some typical answers to that question. You might recognize some of these, I don't know. So we need to update our website, but it's a horrible question when people talk about websites. They've either shown me a website that they've just had done and they spent a lot of money on and they expect me to say it's fantastic, in which case any criticism is not welcome, or they're apologising because it's not up to date, and that is fairly typical. The websites do require work and time, so that's often what they say. Could be social media. A lot of people don't feel particularly confident with social media, or if they are confident with it, they really are struggling to measure it. And as marketeers, as an industry, we are struggling to measure and prove ROI on social media. It's not the easiest thing to do. So frequently they might say, well, okay, I've got a great product, I've got a great service, but I need to get in front of more of the right people. I've got to get my name out there. More of the right people need to find out what I do. So those are typical, and if that's you, don't feel worried or concerned about that. That is very standard. It's not something that you're doing that nobody else is doing. So sometimes when you've got a problem with your marketing, you go back and you might recreate a website, or you might create a new brochure or a new flyer, or you might rebrand, and you hope that's going to solve the problem, but quite often it doesn't. This is one of my favourite quotes. I don't know whether Albert Einstein did actually say this. It's not, nobody really knows whether he did or not, but the quote is great. Definition of insanity: doing the same thing repeatedly over and over again, but expecting different results. And that's where typically small business owners find themselves with their marketing. So at Aardvark and at BizSmart, we recommend trying to take a different perspective at your sales and marketing and looking at it in a more holistic way. So what I'm going to share with you in the webinar is one of our marketing tools that we use with our customers quite often as part of our marketing MOT, the first bit of work we do to try and diagnose exactly what's the problem. And we use it with directors or a senior management team, and it's a self-assessment exercise to assess their own marketing systems and their own marketing processes. So this is where, if you grab yourself a piece of scrap paper and a pen, you're going to do a little self-scoring. So have a go through the webinar or catch up and look at it afterwards if you prefer. So this is our marketing success wheel. It's a simple diagnostic tool. We've got 12 different spokes. We've got 12 different scores I'm going to ask you to do. And then we're going to look at the pattern that that produces. The three things we're going to look at are the size of the wheel, the roundness, and the consistency. And this is just an indication. This is not a fact because it is self-assessment. So if you've got several managers or directors in your business, work through this independently. Don't collaborate. Do it separately. That will tell you something about your business. Anybody in your business who deals with customers, anybody who's customer facing, so certainly the sales team, marketing team, senior managers, but right down to a receptionist, if they're the person that answers to a phone to a customer, they could also have a go at the wheel, and you will get some benefit out of giving that exercise to your employees. So here we go. I want you to score yourself out of 10 for each of these 12 items. So the first one is customer understanding. So a score of 1 to 10, okay, and a 10 would be you have a very strong understanding of your customers, you understand their goals, you understand their challenges, and exactly what they want from you when they're buying your product or service. That will be a 10. Question 2 is asking about your customer and your product mix. It's very healthy in a business to have a balanced mix, different industries, different customers, perhaps different products or services, because they will create sufficient opportunities for sales and for profit growth. And if you've got all your eggs in one basket, that can be a bit of a danger signal. So 10 out of 10 if it's well balanced and you're getting leads from different sources, different industries, and they're all profitable. The third one is understanding your competitors. Now, there might not be a direct competitor. So we're talking about someone like Parker Pens, for example, who several years ago totally changed their marketing because they had been talking about the quality of their pens and the different styles you could have and how long they would write or how long they would endure and what they were made of. And that's fine if people are just looking at pens. But when they did some customer research that illuminated their marketing, they realized that actually they were competing in the gift market and that the majority of the people who bought their pens were buying them as a gift to somebody else. So then they changed their marketing and it was all about color, style, personality, who you were trying to buy for. And that was very successful to them. So it might not be a business that's a direct competitor. There might be other products or services out there that do what you do. So if you know who your competition is, you understand their relative strengths next to you and relative weaknesses, that's a 10. The next three. The fourth one is a fancy word. It's not meant to confuse you. Proposition is what marketers refer to. What do you deliver? What do you promise your customers and how well do you deliver it? So a 10 on proposition is you have a clearly defined offer, your customers understand it, and it is differentiated from your competitors. So do they understand that you're different? Do they understand why you're different and why they can buy from you? What are they going to get from your product or service that they don't get from any other competitor? So that's a 10. Question 5 is your overall business plan. I know BizSmart are very hot on this. It's the first thing you do when you sit down with a BizSmart advisor is look at your overall business plan and your business goals. So a 10 would be clearly defined business goals. Everybody in the business understands those goals and everybody understands their role in contributing to that overall success of the business plan. So again, anything on a 1 to 10, but a 10 is you've got all of that nailed down and shared. And question 6 is a bit easier to understand the new business development. Have you got a proven process and everyone follows the same process and you identify and convert enough new business opportunities to hit targets? So that's a 10. Score yourself 1 to 10. You can be as honest as you like, but the teacher and me will say if you're scoring yourself too high, you're just cheating yourself. So it's up to you. Okay, 7 to 9, marketing objectives. What exactly do you need your marketing to deliver in order to meet the goals that you set in your business plan? Okay, so is that defined? Is it written down, and does everybody understand it? So do you understand in your marketing role what you have to do? Does everybody else understand their role as well? Question 8, marketing strategy. Quite often these are in business owners' heads. So again, I said a 10 out of 10. It's only 10 if you have got a written marketing strategy. It's been shared with you and it's been shared with everybody in your business so that everybody is absolutely clear what the strategy is. So in your head is not enough. Question 9, this is to do with your investment, how much you spend in marketing. You might think it's a cost. I would call it an investment. It depends if you know what you're doing with your marketing. So if it's a 10, your business invests sufficient time and money in marketing support. So quite often businesses, particularly small businesses, don't spend a lot of money, but they do spend a lot of time doing things for themselves and in-house. So have you got sufficient resource to deliver your target? Question 10, an annual marketing plan. Now you might want to break this down into quarters or months or even weeks if that suits you, but you should have an overall annual marketing plan. It's good practice, just focuses you on what you're trying to achieve. So not only have you got a written annual marketing plan, but you stick to it. You do what it says on the tin, and you regularly inform your customers and prospects of any key future activities that are relevant to those customers. So that might be different sectors for different products and services, but you actually do inform them what's going on. Question 11. This is where all the new website, the new brochures, the social media, etc. all fits in. So once you've got your plan, you give yourself a high implementation score if you adhere to the plan and you implement all the activities, so on time, on budget, and effectively executed, high quality relative to your competitors. So if you're not brilliant at this, but your competitors aren't as good either, it actually is just more important that you're better at it than they are. So that's the 10. Do you do what it says on the plan? Do you do it on time and on budget? Is it working? Is it effective? And the last one is marketing KPIs, or key performance indicators. So what are you measuring? Are you tracking your marketing activity on a regular basis? So if you're looking at monthly budgeting, do you do monthly KPIs for your sales and marketing as well? And do you report that? So if you're the boss, you know what the figures are, but if there are more than one of you, sharing that with your team so you can track whether it's working well and you're confident that those key performance indicators, if they're high, are supporting you in your role and your marketing is effective. So you should now have, if you work through with your pen and paper, 12 different scores. You might be able to sketch this out. If that's too tricky, you will be able to get the slides later because Caroline's going to send them out to everybody on the webinar. So you're going to have this wheel with 1 at 12 o'clock and then working clockwise. So question 1, score yourself. 1 is close to the center and a 10 will be at the outside of the circle. So work your way around in a clockwise direction and place your scores on that wheel. So 1 at the center, 10 at the outside, and then the questions round in the circle. And then if you join the dots, you'll get your marketing wheel pattern. So this is like the Blue Peter moment where I show you one that we've done before. This is an average score for a manufacturing business doing reasonably well, £7 million turnover, but they felt they could do better when they came to talk to us. So these are typical scores. And you'll notice the right-hand side, the bits we start with on the customers, the customer understanding, the competitors, tends to be stronger than the left-hand side, which is the planning, the implementation, effectiveness, and the KPI. So that's very typical. And if your wheel looks a bit like that, don't worry, that is what normally happens. So then it gets a bit more interesting because if there are more senior managers in the business or a series of directors or trustees if it's a charity, you're going to score slightly differently. So again, the red is the average, but you can see each different colour there represents a different person's score from the senior management team. So some are scoring slightly higher, some are scoring slightly lower, but the pattern is very similar. The strengths and the weaknesses of that score are very similar. So that tells you, although it's a self-assessment, it does tell you where the strengths and weaknesses in the business are occurring, which is the point of the exercise. And then the last exercise we did with the same business, so this is the same scores, we compared people in head office, because this was a group of companies, so the head office functions, and the staff who were actually implementing their marketing. Sorry, I got my words rather muddled up there. So the purple one are the staff, and they tend to score themselves slightly higher. That's probably because they're closer to what's going on. They're actually involved in the daily, weekly, monthly activities. And the head office staff weren't as happy. So you can see that there's probably a bit of a communication issue there. And that can be apparent again, even though it's just a self-scoring exercise. So how did you do? First question to ask is, how big is your wheel? So if your scores are fairly close to the centre, you will be missing out on some opportunities. If you're at the edge of the wheel, your scores are higher, that's fine. So small scores, your marketing could be more potent. So in this example, the average score was a 4 out of 10. Second, how smooth is the wheel? If your ride is a little bit bumpy, if you could imagine having to actually ride your car or drive it on that wheel, and it's bumpy, you're not being consistent with your marketing. There's things that you're doing well that are strengths, and there are things that need a little bit of work. So again, on this business, we've got quite a high difference. We've got a 6 on the customer understanding, which was their highest average score, and the lowest score was on their key performance indicators and where they're tracking and measuring effectively. So there's quite a big difference there, which means it's bumpy, and that means that their marketing isn't working as efficiently as it might be. They need to address some of those weaknesses. And then if there's more than one person in your business, it's consistency between the individuals. If you have large differences, that tells you something about the way your marketing strategy and implementation is being communicated and shared between the staff who are responsible, perhaps responsible for different elements. Quite often in the business, a small business, you'll have somebody who's comfortable with the digital marketing, the website, the social media. You might have somebody else who has a real strength on the personal network building and is very good at that. But if they're working on a different strategy or they're not communicating with each other, then it's not going to be particularly effective. So again, there's a difference between the highest and the lowest scores, which means there's a lack of consistency within the business. Okay. So that's all very well, you might say. What is the point? Well, I'm hoping some of the questions will have surprised you. I'm hoping that that exercise will identify some of the things that you're not perhaps so hot on as you might be. There are some strengths there and some weaknesses. And I say typically the right-hand side with stronger scores at the beginning of the exercise is fine. That's where most people are. As you get to the second half, your scores tend to go down. So if that's you, it probably means your business is looking at the tactical marketing things. So for example, that will be updating a website, or using social media more, or producing a new brochure every year, or whatever that is in your business. It's that implementation, that tactical stuff that you're thinking about when you have a problem with your marketing. And what we actually need to do in the business is time to time stand back from it and look at, are we getting the strategy right? And are we getting the correct measurement and evaluation? So if you look at the little diagram in front of you, we've got the right strategy and the wrong strategy. So of course, if we've got the right strategy and we're on the right-hand side, that top right, we've got efficient marketing, the tactics is working efficiently, and the strategy is right, your business is going to really thrive. It's going to take off. If you've got the right strategy but you're not very good at updating your website, you will grow, but it's going to be slow. But it's getting the strategy right that's important. If you're just doing the tactical things and you're on the wrong wavelength with your strategy, your business is going to die, it's going to struggle. And all that will happen if you're efficient, it will die faster. So you're just struggling against time there, and you're probably missing something in one of those areas of those 12 questions, or perhaps 2 or 3 areas that you're not getting that strategy quite right, and that means your business isn't going to thrive. So again, those of you who listened before to my webinars will know that I like to talk about the iceberg analogy. When you look at an iceberg from a boat, what you see is about 10% of it. You see what's above the water. That's like our visible marketing. That's the marketing that people see. So when they look at your website or they pick up a leaflet or they talk to you, that's the bit that they think is your marketing. But actually the rest of the iceberg, 90% of it is invisible, and it happens below the surface. So good marketing is that below the surface stuff. It's the thinking, the planning, the piloting. Try something on a low budget before you roll it out everywhere. Pilot something, implement it, and then review and analyze what happened when you implemented that new strategy or that new tactic, and feed that in to inform your next planning cycle. So 90% of your marketing effort is not going to be visible to your customers. It's what the business is doing and getting the strategy right, and planning and implementing and reviewing. So that's where the iceberg analogy comes from. So the strategy is important. Don't just dive into the tactics. That is a fairly typical small business response. So next steps. If you feel you need help, if you've identified some things yourself and you need some further help, this is what we will do with customers, is we run a full marketing MOT, of which that is just one of the tools we use as that. And we can diagnose, for most businesses, an average of 46 things they're missing. So some of those will be the tactical things. So typically for tactics, it's about 12, those quick wins, those things you can do very quickly to make a difference. But 34 of them, most of them, addressing weaknesses tends to be on the strategic side, getting that foundation right. So those are the stats. That's from the last 25 MOTs we've run across various industries, 20 different industries, and the turnover of those businesses range from small, so about 200K was the smallest, up to 5, 7, 10 million. So very different businesses, very different industries, but the patterns are actually quite similar. And their marketing spend, what they're actually looking at in terms of budget, will be anything from 10,000 at the really bottom end to 90,000, 100 grand at the top. So I hope that helped. Thanks very much for listening. And if you think an initial MOT could help you decide whether you need further help, do please call me or call BizSmart and they'll put you in touch.
Great, thank you very much, Jill. You've got a number of questions that have come through. The first one is from Susan, and she asks, should I carry out this exercise if I have a number of different products or services in my organisation?
Okay, so some of the first questions are looking at your product and service and your customer understanding your competitors. If your products and services are different companies you're selling to, different markets, certainly if it's a different brand, that part of the exercise can be done separately, and there's no reason why not. And there was an excellent webinar from Kevin on how to prioritise opportunities, which I suggest you look at as well when you do that scoring exercise. But there should be an overarching business plan and there should be an overarching marketing plan. So as you get into the second half of that wheel, you'll find you can answer the questions the same regardless of which product or service you're talking to or you're talking about. So yes, if you've got separate brands, yes, if you've got separate products or services, the first bit will be different, but the last bit will be exactly the same.
Okay, thank you. Another question's come through from Simon. I seem to be scoring high and generating leads, but they don't seem to be converting into sales.
Okay, so this might mean that your marketing is particularly good. It might mean your marketing is effective. And there could be a problem with the sales process, so actually converting those leads that you're getting into paying customers. If you're in a business-to-business environment, sometimes the length of engagement you have to do with new customers is quite long. So you might think you're getting a lead, and in fact it's just a bit of interest, and they actually need a bit more information, a bit more nurturing. So sometimes if it's B2B particularly, your marketing needs to be a little more long-term. But it could be, if you're getting the right quantity and quality of leads, it could actually be the sales process that's the fault, not the marketing process. So the two should really fit together like a hand and glove. They should move from marketing activity into a quick sale and then back into your marketing for your retaining your existing customers.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you again, Gill, for hosting today's webinar. I will be sending out a copy of the presentation and Gill's contact details out to you all very shortly. But before we close, just a quick reminder that this webinar is part of our service to our Smart Room members. If you are not already a member or a BizSmart client and would like access to our archive of webinars, then please do visit our website, biz-smart.co.uk, and go to the Smart Room page. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for listening and hope you can join us next time.
Goodbye.